Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's a great turnout. I'm very pleased to introduce one of my star former students, Dr. Connie Campbell. Connie did her MA and PhD here in anthropology. She worked on both of those were research she carried out in Acre, Brazil. She actually worked with Chico Mendes for her master's project. And since graduating, she's been first in the NGO sector, working for the Nature Conservancy, and more recently with USAID, where she was for 11 years. And she directed a major Amazon conservation program across various countries. She's living now in Peru. And she's going to talk to us about the border area near between Acre and Peru in that tri-national area. We're really pleased to have her back, and I'm very happy to introduce Connie. Thank you.
Wow, I had. Oh, feel free to go. Thank you very much. I have had a full schedule of meetings, so I'm just running in breathless from my previous one. But I've never seen this room.
Yeah, we've never had some people.
You should have brought popcorn or something. So I have a few slides to go through that will stimulate our conversation. The most important point is to say what an honor it is to be back here, to see so many familiar faces and mentors and friends, and I've met quite a few new students here who have woken up parts of my brain that I haven't used in quite a while. So it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And hi, I know you. I was walking over here with Farah. Is she here?
Well, there you are, right in front.
And we were talking about recent events that have happened in MdDios, the region that borders Peru, that borders Bolivia and Brazil. And because of that and other things that have happened in the last 2 weeks since I wrote the title of my talk, I'm going to focus on, as you can see, a bit more on the Peruvian side of the border, because there's so much going on there in terms of development conflicts, development opportunities, conservation research opportunities, governance needs, and analyses that would be very helpful to the region. So I'm, for this talk, stepping a bit across the border from Acre into Peru for the main focus. And so I actually concentrated a lot in this presentation about what's going on in MdDios, which is kind of the bulk of my presentation. But as I was finishing it last night and gathering some news that was just still coming in, I realized it was quite a depressing story. So I put some more positive things at the beginning to keep us from thinking that all is not lost. Is the red page up? Just
Your arrow,
right-hand arrow, right? Okay. So this is a piece of very good news that I wanted to start off with. This is the Sierra del Divisor, which as of 12 days ago is now a national park, 1.3 million hectares. It has been 8 years in the making. It has been a national reserve, but without the protection that a national park has. And this is the iconic cono there in the middle of it. This is along the border with Brazil's Cerro do Divisor National Park. And so now we have a contiguous corridor that links not only the two national parks, but also links a number of indigenous reserves, territorial reserves, which are for the isolated and voluntary contact indigenous groups on the Peruvian side of the border, and extractive reserves in the state of Acre. And this, the designation of this area as a national park has been designated, that didn't come out right. The designation of this national park has been claimed to be a real gift to the world in terms of calling it the Yellowstone of the Amazon because of the high diversity and compactness of the zone. There are threats of encroachment due to colonization, but there currently are not any road corridors going right in or out of the park. The biggest threat right now is from drug trafficking, some clearing that goes along with that. And the example of this national park and its conversion from a reserve into a park shows some of the dynamics of environmental governance in Peru, and that this proposal has been vetted. They did the IEA, the local communities were consulted, and then it sat in the Prime Minister's cabinet desk for 2 years, I think, something like that. And in part, the thinking was that this park was not designated yet because of pressure from loggers in this area. But it finally was designated, and the contrast that I want to present is the good story of the national park and that victory for conservationists, if you will, with the striking destruction that's happening along the Interoceanic Azur, southern branch of the Interoceanic Highway that runs all the way from Brazil through Rio Branco and Acre, down across the border in Assis, Brazil, and there's now a bridge that crosses the MdDios River in Puerto Maldonado, and then the road continues from Puerto Maldonado up to Cusco and Lima. So that road is now completely paved, and along with paving comes access, as you well know. And so this is just one area of illegal gold mining along the Interoceanica, which runs right here. And I wanted to draw your attention to this area here, which I'll be talking about later, so you can see the power and the capacity to be able to protect forest zones to a certain degree, even when right across the road you see the kind of devastation that's happening. Oh, that's the red thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't work on the screen.
Oh, that's good. I have to admit that I really don't like pointers because I find most people put it on the screen and then they go like this.
So just use your finger.
I'll just use my finger. But you can see the devastation there, obviously, the milky white area. This constitutes the bulk of my talk in terms of reflecting about what's happening in the Peruvian Amazon today and other parts of the Colombian Amazon and other parts of Peru as well. The informal or illegal gold mining seems to be continuing unabated despite recent presidential decrees, 3 of which were seeking to combat the expansion of illegal gold mining. There are presidential decrees limiting the sale and distribution of gasoline, very strict restrictions and implementation against illegal logging now in this region, and then also stricter enforcement of drug trafficking, all of which has the regional government of MdDios, which is basically the state in the Peruvian Amazon, up in arms. As you can see, the expansion here with this work from ACA that Matt Feiner did, you can see the expansion just in the course of less than a year. And there are many, many examples of this. ACA is an NGO that has offices in Puerto Maldonado, which is the capital of the state of MdDios, and also in Lima and Cusco. And they're doing some of the best real-time mapping in CERMAP, which is the National Park Service in Peru, so that they can get out there, because they have documented illegal mining that is now encroaching into the Tambopata National Reserve, the Bajalos National Park, and other private and community reserves. The good news there is that this vigilance is leading to a greater enforcement, but the whole scale and power of the informal mining operation and the agility of the informal miners to quickly move from one area to another, their ability to come back quickly after the army is sent in and they explode their generators and blow up their boats and sink their dredges, in a matter of days they're just back at it again. So it's an insidious challenge to overcome, given that the government's efforts to control inputs such as gasoline and mercury have seemingly come to naught due to the black market ability to continue to fund these operations. And as I was preparing for this presentation and thinking about the current catastrophe that we're facing in MdDios with gold mining, I went back to comments that I was asked to put together for the conference in March, the Latin American Studies Conference. And you might recall that there was an alumni panel and we kind of divvied up what might be pathways to sustainability. And lucky me, I got the easy ones of governance and human rights and governance and climate change. And so these, I just pulled up some of these slides because there's some comfort in continuity, and that these challenges and issues, of course, involved since March of 2015. But there's also a very sad and disconcerting, tragic element to this, and that some of the slides that I showed in March are now more than ever more striking. This report having to do with dead friends of the earth, killings of people who are involved in environmental defense actions. This is data that ended in the end of 2014. And on this, in this global data set, Brazil is number 1, 448 per year, shortly followed by Indonesia. Out of the 147 odd countries, I think, that they did. Can anybody hazard a guess where Peru sits in terms of number of environmental activists killed?
Third.
I hear 2. Third. As of this report, Peru was 4th. 72, I think. But that did not include some killings that happened later in the year, and an additional one that we're going to talk about here. So these are very striking and sobering numbers, even as we are working on decades and decades of academic support and research and development projects to abate the violence that's affiliated with efforts such as those led by Chico Mendes to secure land title for people who live in the rainforest, be the indigenous, Iso Colono, caboclos. And again, this was a slide that I showed in March, and I said it's sad, but it's also a call to action on our part that we still show the picture of Chico Mendes, which is meaningful to many of us, even though Karen and I were joking over dinner last night that there are students on campus who weren't even born when he was killed. And it makes me feel very old, but the fact that iconic images and iconic tragedies like this are still a hallmark of conservation and development in Amazon, I think, is a clarion call to see how we all might better link human rights with the conservation and development issues that we are struggling with. Also at that conference in March, I showed this photo of Edwin Chota. Edwin was one of 4 Ashaninka leaders who were murdered along the Brazil-Peru border. There are now two Brazilians in jail who've been charged with this murder. The good outcome of this is that after 12 years of struggle, the Edwin's community, the Soweto Ashaninka community, now has title to the land. And very interestingly and very appropriately, a new generation of leaders has emerged from that community, and they're almost all female. 2 of the widows of 3 murdered community members, and then the daughter of one of those, who's since gone on to New York to receive human rights awards, and she's coming into her own and finding a voice as a speaker for the community. And so thinking about these 2 gentlemen and the struggles that they represent, and that takes us back to this first image that I showed here in November of 2015, December of 2015. This area right here is a forest concession, a reforestation concession, some people call it, right along the Interoceanica, and it's owned and operated by a man that I had the opportunity to meet, and he was gunned down last 2 Fridays ago now at his sawmill. Alfredo Vraco is the son of a Czech immigrant, born and raised in Peruvian Amazon. He and his family own 2 concessions, one right along the road, and then they have another that's 2,400 hectares on the backside of their property. And over the years, Alfredo has come into increasing conflict with miners who have incurred onto his territory and who have created mining pits along the edges of his territory, as well as in the forest that he's trying to manage. He has been struggling with this since 2007 and has had infuriating experiences, including one in which he went to a roundtable conversation at a local university to discuss illegal mining. And the invited speakers were the very miners who had invaded his land and destroyed part of his forest concession. And all of this came to a head on Friday when they went into a sawmill and gunned him down. I saw this alleged police investigation still going on, but one of his sawmill operators was there and was not injured, but was able to see the assailants. Farah had talked with the gentleman about doing some research on it in session. So, but this really strikes home when it's people that we know and that we have supported either financially or otherwise through different projects and their efforts. And so it puts an individual human face on what's going on in MdDios. Again, Madre is the southeasternmost region or state in Peru, on the border with Peru and Bolivia. Alfredo was killed on Friday, November 20. This was scheduled to start on Monday, November 23rd, and it did start as scheduled. This is a huelga or paro minero in MdDios. I find it a little ironic that it's the illegal gold miners who are going on strike because they're finding it difficult to do their illegal gold mining. But that's just the way that it's the way that it comes out. Unlike other strikes in MdDios, and this is one of many over the past several years, this is a paro indefinido. We don't know when it's going to stop. It's been going on now for a full week and 2 days. Today's Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day it is. And it's not abating. And some of the repercussions, aside from what you see here on the streets of Puerto Maldonado, which is the capital, this was one of the initial walks, protest walks taken by the Mining Federation. And they have basically, as the headline shows, they've basically taken control of the Chota-Ashaninka. It's a shame and it's very regrettable, but it's also quite telling that sitting up here, it's hard to get news. I mean, Stephen's pulling his hair out trying to figure out what's going on out there with the project that he runs, because USAID in Lima wants to know, but the national press is not covering. They put images like this, and when there's burning tires and flames, they're all over it. But they're not being responsible, I think, in covering the real impact of this strike and some of the complexities underlining it. And so even last night at midnight, the most recent news that I was able to find is that the regional president, who's basically the governor, and the former president of this mining federation met with the prime minister of Lima at 5 o'clock yesterday. And there was no reporting last night. I haven't been able to get online this evening. But the bad news is we don't hear that it's going to be stopping anytime soon. And the repercussions are that tourism has stopped. The airport in Puerto Maldonado has been closed a couple times. You might think that this is in Puerto Maldonado, which is the capital city of the region, but it's not. This is Masuco, which is a little town that can't be more than officially 6,000 or 8,000 residents. But because it's near one of the largest mine areas, it has just exploded over the last 5 or 6 years, and demonstrations in Masuco, which is along the road back towards Cusco, are even bigger than the demonstrations that you see in Puerto Maldonado. Other images that we see from this strike are streets that are totally empty. Everyone is staying at home for security's sake. All of our NGO colleagues not to go to work. We took the signs down outside of their office. And Farah was just telling me that she talked with folks who said there are lines down the street, a few stores that are still open because Puerto depends solely on truck transport to bring in all of its groceries, their dry goods, and those are completely cut off both from Brazil and from Cusco. And it's day 8 or 9, and things don't seem to be getting any better. So again, the complaint of the regional government and those who are striking are against the 3 presidential decrees that are limiting supply of fuel, limiting the supply of fuel, combating illegal logging, and combating the drug trafficking. But it's really the gasoline that is the crux of the main matter. But you know, these guys are going to get their gasoline come hell or high water from the black market, and so who's suffering are people who can't put gas in their motorcycles, taxis. Farah was telling about a school who they can only buy enough gas to get halfway to where they want to go and can't get kids back and forth to school. And so for that reason, you see what I see as an ironic conglomeration of stakeholders strike, and that even the tourism companies are now behind the strike because when the airport closed and they can't get their customers in and out, or when the airport's open, their customers have to wheel their suitcases from the airport in Puerto Maldonado 6 or 10 kilometers to either the hotel or the eco lodge near town, and then they have to hope that the tourism company has enough gas in its boat to get the lodge and back again. And international and domestic tourism, particularly international in MdDios, is a huge. So it's affecting many other sectors of civil society and the economy, and we still don't know exactly what the outcome is. The federal government going to lift the suspension on gasoline sales, and they may likely do that because it seems like it's not abating the line anyway. But it's very messy. And speaking of environmental governance, the regional president, he went to Lima yesterday. He took with him the mayors of all of the little towns that populate from this area, from Masuco all the way up to Iberia, which is about halfway up to the. So he's got a whole contingent of local government officials with him. It's not just a clear miners versus everybody else longer. So in the midst of all of this, it both gives hope, but it also raises the question about, oh my God, how effective things like this. And we have NGOs trying to put out manuals and guides and briefings about how to get involved in decision making about illegal mining, how to develop a more effective environmental citizenry. When, as we discussed in the Amazon seminar yesterday, he's here, Mike, asked a really good question about democratizing the development process. And the fact of the matter is that the governor of MdDios was elected in a free and fair election. His constituency wanted him in office. There are no moves whatsoever in whichever office. And so it begs a question about what we mean about democratizing the development process, and is it something as perhaps high-handed as us saying, oh, we need to educate better. And so it's a real struggle as Lima-based groups like this that have had to shutter their offices in Puerto Maldonado are struggling to reconcile a process of decentralization where decisions are being from the capital and the national government to the regional government. At the same time that we're dealing with electoral processes that generate results like MdDios, deal with this sort of conflict. And so at the end of my comments here, I wanted to turn things a bit from the bleak a bit to the more positive. These two pictures are of President Omala and First Lady Nadine Heredia when they visited the Shipibo community of Puebla in Cayali, outside of Ucalpa. And it was this visit the day after he declared the Sierra del Divisor National Park. And so we've got very striking images showing up in the papers just within 1 week of each other of this sort of everybody's happy, and the international community was very pleased also with the declaration of the Sierra del Divisor National Park, celebrating Peru's biodiversity, cultural diversity, cultural heritage, and then contrasting that with the images from Madre and gold mining, and not to forget the illegal logging that's going on though in that region, which perhaps doesn't have a striking image, but it does. And I wanted to draw your attention as I close my remarks to the fact that this is not at all an unusual image to see when the president and other officials go visit highland communities, lowland communities. The first thing that usually happens when they step off the plane or get off the boat is that they are dressed in native garb. And the same thing happened to me and colleagues from USAID Ecuador and the Nature Conservancy. I was out in Sopasoa in November of last year, and we were just going out there for a visit to see the fish farming thing. And we barely had time to get off the boat before this lady looks small and weak, but man, she takes your arm and she just yanks you up out of the river, and the whole community is there all dressed up, and they put you in this tunic or the shirt that the first lady is wearing, and they start this whooping and hollering. Whoa, that's my ear, lady. And they escort you running from the riverside up to the main open area in their community where the rest of the community is standing, and they get you in a circle and they dance you around, and it's an awful lot of fun, and it's a typical reception for that community, and it shows that the native communities, indigenous communities surrounding the Sierra del Divisor National Park are very, very, very proud of their heritage, pleased with this park designation because it'll help them reconcile indigenous versus indigenous conflicts that they have over areas and titles of areas near the national park, and also help them with production projects and with the illegal or the drug runners that are frequently Brazil-Peru border. And in particular, the cultural heritage aspect is important. And the last thing I wanted to stop on is, I hope, going to generate a lot of discussion. This whole question about Peru's cultural diversity and how it is celebrated and how it is implemented in public policies through the prior consultation laws that are now on the books. And what does it mean for Peru to recognize its indigenous populations? The fact that 60% of the country is in the Amazon, where indigenous people live, and yet most limeños are pretty much unaware of things like Sierra del Divisor, and they don't get much reporting on the mining strike in MdDios. And yet I'm wondering if something like this is going to be perhaps even more effective in reaching audiences in Lima and elsewhere to send an interesting message about cultural diversity in the Peruvian Amazon. Coca-Cola has a campaign, which I understand they have in the States here, about sharing a Coca-Cola, where they put names of people on the bottles. And they've gone through the Felipes and the Juanas and everything else. And this was part of their press release, in which they speak about the fact that they're going all across the country with the purpose of including in their initiative all Peruvians, at the same time celebrating the diversity of our region as well as the richness of our culture. And so for me, this raises questions of, yes, this is Coca-Cola increasing sales, and it's supposed to be like those old Coca-Cola commercials at Christmas time, you know, the world needs a Coke. What was that song? You know that song, Buy the World a Coke, right? It's supposed to bring a tear to your eye. So is that social inclusion in the sense of there's greater recognition now of indigenous populations, perhaps because of this one Coca-Cola ad? You know, is it just exploitation that we're now getting Coca-Cola out to one more community that does not find sugar in its diet? But if this works, this is a hot link here, and it'll go to a 1-minute YouTube video of the Coca-Cola ad, which is now showing in Lima.
Thank you, family. Thank you, family.
Isa kaisi mutsa yaka.
Ingkang bare.
Korean with na.
Inding Vima.
Yesterday, I gotta stop this before we see, who knows what it decides it wants us to see next. Okay. Oh, cancel stuff. Stop! Yesterday in the Amazon seminar, we had some interesting conversations about communication and the need for public policy to tell your story really well, to get your research and your findings in the hand of Congress people and others who can advocate for you. You know, publication, Twitter, Facebook, not creative, but when you've got something as seemingly effective as Coca-Cola and the connections that they've made with the Shipibo community and the whole conglomeration that they have of global marketing, it really raises some interesting questions for me in observations about cultural hegemony, but also the celebration of cultural diversity in a country like Peru. So with that, I'd like to talk with you all about what you think after seeing that ad and the rest of it. And as we are able to get more news, we certainly will keep you posted on what's going on in MdDios so that people like Farah can take out their research. So thank you very much, and I look forward to Tropi talking with you.